Hi, I'm Jules.
And I'm Zak, and welcome back to Life After Prison, Getting Out, your guide to adapting to life on the outside.
So in each episode, we're exploring a different issue that you may face when you're released from prison. And today is all about money. It can be hard to get used to it again on the out. Plus, you may have debts and issues from before or even during your time inside.
Yeah, you know, sometimes, like one time when I got released, my bank account got closed due to like inactivity. So when I got out, I went to go to the bank because I thought I had money in there, and I actually did. And they're like, well, your account's been closed. It's been inactive or X, Y, and Z. I was like, so what am I meant to do? So I had to go through that whole process again. And that was quite challenging, especially when you come out, you're going to be on universal credit or some sort of benefits or something, and you need the account open in order for that to get the ball rolling. Mm-hmm. So it's quite frustrating.
Yeah, it can be tough.
So it's really important that, you know, we talk about this issue. Yeah. And today we have a voice note from Dwayne, who struggled with getting a bank account. So let's hear from Dwayne.
Hi, my name's Dwayne. Have you guys had money issues, finance issues? Yeah, I had many finance issues. I was in and out of prison for a long time. And the main problem for me was not having ID and not having a permanent address. So it was very, very difficult for me to open bank accounts. And because I didn't have a bank account, I couldn't then use it for any work, any money that anybody was giving me. I had nowhere to really direct it to. I had many, many problems. So what I basically had to do was sort out my ID in order to sort out my banking situation. And I'm happy now to say I have a bank account. It took me many, many, many years to do so. And I had to jump through many hoops, but it paid off in the end.
Dwayne, thank you so much for sending that in. That is really, really tough. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that as well. So our guest for today is Emma from Clean Slate. So hi, Emma.
Hi, hello.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Emma, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the work you do at Clean Slate?
So I am the head of programs for Clean Slate, and what we do is provide a service for anybody that wants to be better off. So we help people to improve their finances by looking at their budget, by looking at their income and trying to find every bit of income that we possibly can to bring that up a level, to make sure that you're not spending anything that you don't have to be spending. And we also help people to find work or better paid work so that they can be better off in that way. And we do that also by using the internet to look at both of those things.
Oh, that's great. That's really great. So touching on that, since you've told us that, what would someone in Dwayne's position do? Yeah,
ID is that's a really common problem, actually. And it's a really difficult sort of catch-22, because if you're going to be having a salary, if you're going to be working, or if you're going to be claiming benefits, you need to have a bank account for that money to go into. And you need ID to set up that bank account very often. And you need some money. Sometimes if you don't have any ID, you need money in order to get hold of that ID. So it's like a sort of circle where you can't escape it. So I thought it might be good if I talk about the kind of ID and documents you might need if you were going to set up a bank account, and sort of run through some of those, so you sort of, just in case somebody doesn't know what those are. Mm-hmm. And then I'll go back a bit and I'll talk about what happens if you don't have those documents and what you can do.
Yeah, please do.
So if you're going to set up with a regular high street bank account, very often they ask for two things. They want proof of who you are, that's your ID bit, and they want proof of where you live. And those two things sort of go together. And on the ID side of things, it's very often a passport or a birth certificate. And a passport is, if you don't have one of those, there is costs attached to that. So you've got to go through a process of applying for it, and you need some other documents for that as well. It's very often a birth certificate from your parents or some other document from your parents. And the cost of that, if it's online, is £75.50. And it's a little bit more, actually, if you're not doing it online. So if you're just doing the paper application, it's £85 for the basic passport. So it's not an insignificant sum of money. And if you need to get hold of your birth certificate, because maybe you want to get hold of your passport, that's £50 as well. And there's a process that you go through online to apply for those. So there's money involved before you get started on all of those. And if you're going to have proof of where you live as well, there's a whole range of documents, and every bank on its website will have a list of the documents that they need from you before you can open a bank account. So if you're not sure, look on their website, Barclays, Santander, HSBC, all of these banks, they'll tell you on the website what they will need from you if you're going to set up an account. For the proof of address, it can be loads of different things, like a utility bill. A recent utility bill is a really common one. A recent letter about your benefits, anything from a medical professional or a social worker or probation officer, any kinds of professional that you're working with, a letter like that includes your address, that would count as proof of address. Again, it's a little bit different with every single bank, so I couldn't speak for all of them. But you can quite easily find out what they want from you. So if you've got those things, if you happen to have a passport and a letter with your address on it, then that's a kind of an easier process, and the bank can help you through the process of setting up an account. If you don't have ID, there is actually, and normally I don't like to suggest just one bank, because part of what we do giving people guidance is to show them a whole range of places that they could go and get a bank account, and different banks have different products and they might be better in one way and maybe not so good in another for different people. But in this case, there is a real strong sort of one-off in terms of not having ID and getting a bank account, and that is HSBC. So they've got a no fixed address bank account that you can access without any form of ID at all. But what you do need is a referral from one of their named charity partners. So if you access support from some people that they've got on a big list on the website as well, so you can find out where they are. And I had a quick look yesterday and they've got loads all over the country. So there's named organisations that can refer you in to get a no fixed address bank account. So you can't rock up at the branch and say, I hear you've got a no fixed address bank account, I'd like one of those. You do have to go through a process of getting the support first. But often that's a good thing, because, those organisations will help you in other ways as well as just getting that bank account. So it's good to be connected to those anyway. And that list in itself is really useful if you want to look where you are and find a whole load of organisations that will help people who are housing insecure. So maybe haven't got their own place or, worried about housing. There's a whole list of organisations there as well.
Wow. Okay. So, you've given us a lot of information there, which is really, really helpful. So first of all, having your ID or your passport or your birth certificate, they do cost money. So be prepared for that. Or there is another way through HSBC, and what was the other, going through another organisation? Yeah,
there's a big list of them. So
researching that online of what organisations there are and kind of going through it that way.
And every bank's got a different criteria for the proof of address that they accept.
I had to look through quite a lot of them, and there is all of the other ones will require, it's the form of ID and proof of address. What I would say also is, with the cost of ID, there are places that can support you with getting the money to access ID. And there's it's often organisations that provide individual grants. So as in, not for an organisation or a charity, but they'll fund individuals directly. And that's often on the list of things that are sort of essential items that you might need that you could apply for.
So there's a benefit of doing both. So obviously if you get that some help with getting your passport or birth certificate, that can be useful in the future for you anyway, to have your passport or birth certificate. But also, getting in contact with an organisation that can help you with that might be able to help you with something else, for example, accommodation, or
if you're applying for that kind of grant and you need support with a bank account, the chances are that it's good to make use of all the other support that those organisations can provide you
amazing
with as well. And ID is really important, because if you're going to go on to claim benefits as well, you have to prove your identity. So that's a really good way of getting it set up at the same time, so that you can access everything by having some ID.
And touching on benefits, are there benefits that someone like Dwayne or someone in his position can access?
Well, there's a lot of people who are not used to the benefit system, or maybe they've been on what's called legacy benefits before. There's been a shift over to universal credit. So lots of people listening might know all about universal credit, might have been on it before. But just in case you don't, the system changed a few years ago where all of what they call legacy benefits, which is, there's 6 of them. I'm going to have to try and remember them now. Hang on. Income support, housing benefit, child tax credit, working tax credits, JSA and ESA. Ooh,
wow, well done.
Well done. Smashed it.
Somewhere.
That's amazing.
All of those, they're moving people off those benefits and onto universal credit.
Okay.
And that's happened already in a lot of places, especially for some of those benefits, those old legacy benefits. But what triggers a change often is if you have what's called a change of circumstances. So if your address changes, for example, then that often triggers a change in the benefits that you claim and you get moved over onto universal credit.
Right.
And it's a process of reapplying. And there's been loads in the press about universal credit. If you haven't been on it before, I think there's been lots of stories about how it hasn't worked so well, or it's been complicated, or the process of getting that whole new system set up. There's been stories about people who've had complicated cases and it hasn't worked well and all of that stuff. So it does fill people. Every time I've spoken to somebody about, for example, if they're on JSA and they're about to go on to universal credit, I can feel like the tension of it. And I'm not surprised. I would be tense as well. It's a big shift and a big change and the worry that it's going to go wrong. So I would suggest to everybody, first of all, if you want to know what you're entitled to, there's a few sites online that you can go and check that. So you could just put in all of your details, all of your circumstances, and it's a little bit like you just input all the information about yourself. And then at the end, it comes up with what you're entitled to. And there's some really well-known ones. There's a website called Turn to Us, which has got benefits. It's a benefits checker, and it's also grants as well. So you can also put in and just find out all the grants you might be entitled to.
Wow. Okay,
which
cool.
is super useful. And as a support worker as well, I'm not going to know all of the regionally specific ones all over the country. I'm just not going to hold that information in my head. I can do the legacy benefits, 6 of those, and that's it. So I'll go on to Turn to Us alongside somebody, or I'll show them the website and they can do it themselves. And you can find out everything that you would be entitled to. And then also there is a website called Entitled To, and that's another really good benefits checker. And I often suggest to people that they do both and double check. And it's even then a really good idea to speak to a welfare advisor locally. If you know that there's an organisation locally that can provide proper advice on welfare, check with them as well. Just make sure you're not missing out on anything, because there's about £15 billion a year of unclaimed benefits.
Wow.
So yeah. And it's not like,
and that's not okay.
Things aren't expensive at the moment. No one needs any extra money.
Okay, so it's about being in the know about what you're entitled to.
Absolutely.
So how can people actually claim universal credit? What's the process?
So universal credit, unlike other benefits in the past, is entirely online. So that's a big change from the other benefits, and another reason to be able to access the internet. So in order to claim, you have to check that you're eligible first of all. So on the Universal Credit website, you can check whether or not you're eligible, and also those benefits claimers, benefit checkers, Turn to Us and Entitled To will let you know as well. And then you set up an account on the Universal Credit website. And you've got to make a claim within 28 days of setting up your account. So you can set up an account, have a think about it. But if it's after 28 days, you're going to have to go back and set up an account again. So then you make your claim and you put in all of your details and your claim is made. And then you should then have an appointment with a work coach at the Job Centre Plus. So that you'll have a conversation with a work coach as part of the Job Centre within 10 days normally, I think. And that might be on the phone or it might be in person. And there's lots changing in the wake of the pandemic. So for a while, everything shifted to be over the phone, and now there's lots more appointments face to face. But you will have that conversation with a work coach. And around that time, you'll discuss, you'll have to prove your identity as well. So there's an ID checking process, another reason to have those ID documents at that point. And that can be done online, the ID checking as well. But you can also bring your documents in person and show them as well if you're more comfortable doing that. So yeah, that's the sort of initial process. And at that point, you will also start to talk about work commitments, claimant commitments, which is where the work coach will explain to you, and it's completely dependent on your circumstances. So it's different for everybody. But there are a few sort of baselines of how many hours of work they would expect you to have after a certain point, or how many hours of looking for work, or a combination of both. And those claimant commitments, there are sort of guidelines that the job centre has, depending on your circumstances, but that's also the beginning of a conversation that you need to have with your work coach. So if you feel like your circumstances are actually a bit different and you need to discuss that and how it impacts on those work commitments that you're signing up to, you need to have that conversation with your work coach at the start. And just make sure that you are representing the reality of your situation so that the job centre can help you find the work and the level of work that's right for you.
Amazing.
And then once you've claimed, there are some other things to consider as well. If you've got sort of health issues that you need to factor in, whether or not you're going to claim the housing element of universal credit, because the old housing benefit is now all tied up with UC. So sort of talk about where you're living and your rent, and whether you're going to claim your rent through the housing element of universal credit and things like that. And there's a gap. So between the claim and then there's an assessment period. And then the other big difference, apart from being online, is that universal credit is paid monthly. So that's a huge difference to where maybe if you had two different benefits coming in, maybe fortnightly or weekly, and you would manage your money through the month like that with regular bits of money coming in. This is one payment and it's monthly, which is a big shift in terms of planning, about how you budget for it. There's a lot of things you can do to prepare for that and get ready for it and not be surprised by it, basically. And you can apply to have those payments split into every fortnight.
Can you? Yeah, that's helpful, right?
Yes. But typically you'd need to be working alongside somebody like a support worker, social worker, or professional who would help you to make the case as to why you might need that. But it is possible. I don't think that's sort of commonly known. You can ask to have them fortnightly. And you can also, they call them alternative payment arrangements. So if you've got accessibility issues in terms of accessing universal credit online only, you can, if you do it right at the start. So once you set up an account and make a claim online, you can't actually go back and say, no, I don't want to do it online anymore. But if right from the start, you've got the support of a professional saying, working online is not going to work for this person, then you can make an offline claim and have those visits to the job centre in the old way of going in and seeing people face to face, or having telephone calls.
Okay, that's really helpful to know.
Yeah, if you've got if you previously had health related benefits, universal credit can accommodate those as well, and you have to be assessed to have a sense of what your health related needs are. So you have an assessment that's run by the job centre, and then there's two levels of health-related extra payments that you might get, all based around limited capability for work. So it's sort of saying that they expect you to do less in terms of looking for work and actively working because of your health, and therefore you have additional payments on top. But that is something to get advice on. Advice with a capital A, but just to know that is available and that you need to find more information out about it. And actually your work coach should be able to explain that to you in lots of detail as well.
Great stuff.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask you as well. If, for example, I was coming out of prison with like some sort of debt, how would I go about, sorting that out? As in, explaining I've just got out. Is there a process? What would the process be? So there are lots of amazing debt advice agencies that will tell you what your options are around debt. And in order to provide debt advice that's regulated, you need to be qualified. There are legal connotations and definitions for all of the terms involved. It's a complicated thing, debt, and they are the experts. So those are the people that you need to go and see to find out what your options are. There are organisations like Step Change, you might have heard of. There's National Debt Line. Both of those have got telephone lines as well. You don't necessarily need to be online to have that initial conversation. There's Christians Against Poverty. That's another
national debt agency, and they actually do home visits in some places as well once you've got access to their service. There are also local debt support agencies. So again, using the library, you can find out what those are, or looking at the council should have those listed as well on their website. But you need to speak to a qualified debt advisor. But there are some things you can do before you access that appointment. And the main thing really, well, the first thing is don't panic, okay? Because debt is stressful. There's lots of anxiety attached to that.
Great advice to start with.
Don't panic. I know it's easy for me to say sometimes, but the crucial thing is knowing what is happening, because sometimes when you're worried about debt, you're not looking. So you might not be opening those letters. You might not want to, check. If you do have an online account, you might not be checking it or looking at it very much, because you don't really want to see what's going on. It's a big sort of barrier to that. So actually having somebody alongside you, if you can find somebody who can give you financial guidance, and sit down with you and work out what is happening, that is the biggest first step, is just to look at full on and work, even if it's not the information you want to know particularly, at least you know the extent of it, you know where the boundaries are of that problem. So look at what you've got coming in, look at what has to go out, list all of the things that you think that you owe, list what the repayments are right at the moment, and you can put together a budget plan. We have one of those on our website that you can use online, or we've got physical copies. And sometimes, honestly, the process of just having somebody sit next to you, even when you can do it yourself, it's not like you don't need to be brilliant at maths. You just need to understand what's happening in your own life and put those numbers onto a sheet. But having somebody there with you is like a massive morale boost. It's a big thing to get that process underway. And then when you do go and speak to a debt advisor, actually the first thing they'll ask you is, what do you know about your debt issues at the moment? They'll ask you the same thing. So if you've got that ready, many services are super stretched at the moment, and you may not get that appointment like today or tomorrow. There might be a little wait. Citizens Advice is another amazing agency that I haven't mentioned, actually. That's a really big one. They'll help you with debt. And but just getting everything ready before you go means that you can hit the ground running. You don't kind of lose an appointment just sort of getting everything set up. You can do that in advance. So there's also lots of other organisations that can help you prepare for a meeting about your debt.
And can they tell you if you are in debt? Because if you don't know whether you've got any debt issues, is there a specific way to find out?
Yes, and you can do credit checks yourself as well, but you need to check out those in advance and make sure that there aren't fees attached, or that it in itself affects your credit history. So you need to kind of work out what's the best option for you, but a debt advisor will be able to tell you that. Definitely.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
That's all right, no worries.
Can I please ask you, Emma, to recap the main points of today? That would be really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, so the main points are, if you are accessing a bank account, there are ways to get ID together if you don't have it already. There's ways that you can access funding for that. You can also access a bank account without any of that through the HSBC No Fixed Address account. And you need to be referred by one of the listed organisations, and that's on their website, on the HSBC No Fixed Address account website. There's a big list of organisations that can support you to do that. And the other points I wanted to mention were around universal credit, that you need to be online. And there are also, as an organisation, Citizens Advice has a service called Help to Claim, and they can support you to make that application as well. So they'll stay with you through that initial process, and they'll also be there on your first payment to make sure that things have gone right.
That's great.
It's great. It's really good. Yeah. And they've got a telephone line as well, so it doesn't have to be online. So on debt, the advice is don't panic, work out what is happening, ask for help. There are lots and lots of people that can support you to map your finances and feel more in control of it. It might not look the way that you want it to at the moment, your finances, but understanding what is happening is the first step to being more in control. So ask for help from professionals who know what they're talking about around money and debt, and prepare for that appointment. If you have debt and you have an appointment that's in a month's time, don't sit and twiddle your thumbs and wait for that appointment. Get everything ready in advance if you possibly can, and ask for support to do that if you're not sure how.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And there are other organizations that can help you with money. So first of all, we've obviously had Emma from Clean Slate. Emma, is there anything else that you'd like to add just before we mention some more?
Yes. Well, if you did want to access Clean Slate's services, we have lots of things available on our website. And we also have a money skills website called Quids-In. So if you Google Quids-In, there's a website full of tips and information about everything you could possibly think about to do with your money, especially if you're on a low income. It's a really useful resource, so go and have a look at that. And on there, we've got a budget planner. So just what I was talking about, where you sort of lay out everything that's happening with your money. We've got one of those. And we've also got what we call a money health check. So that is an online tool and it's 25 questions. It's a bit like a quiz. And you don't need to give any information, the specifics of your money. You don't need to give any personal information at all. It's just 25 yes or no answers. And every time you answer no, so those questions might be like, do you open your post regularly? Because if you're not opening your post, it might be because you're really worried about what's inside the bills. Do you have an email address? Do you check it regularly? Do you know what's coming in? Like, you don't have to say what it is, but have you got a sense of what's coming in every month? Is it always the same? Those kinds of questions. So you can rattle through and do 25 of those. And then every time you say no, that generates a series of suggestions of little things that you can do and check, and also short links to other organisations that provide specialist support. And so there are some questions on debt. Are you free of debt at the moment or taking action on it? And if you say no, then that will lead you through to links to debt organisations like the ones we've mentioned. So that does that automatically. And you get a whole package of places that you've then been signposted to, so you can go and have a look at those.
That's great.
So that's free. You can use that. Anybody can use that. I'd really encourage everyone to give it a go. I do it. And we've also got the web chat. So that is open all the time. And if you've just got a question that needs answering, put it into the web chat. There'll be somebody there to answer.
Oh, that's great to know, innit? That you can put in a question and get a response straight away.
Answer.
Amazing.
Great, yeah.
Thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
sharing all that, Emma. So we have some more organisations. We've already mentioned Step Change, who help manage debt.
Yes, and there are other organisations. You've got a government website you can go to, which is www.gov.uk/benefits-calculators. And on that page, you can find a benefit calculator that lets you know the benefits that you are entitled to. You can also go to Citizens Advice. And if you're listening on the inside, the Hardman Trust can help you with your finances.
And we will include all links to all the organisations we've talked about today in the show notes. So have a look at them there.
Yes. And if anything in this episode has helped you get in support with your finances, or you fancy just getting in touch with us, you can DM us on Instagram and Twitter at AfterPrisonPod. If you want, you can send an email to podcasts@prison.radio, or you can write to us at Life After Prison, National Prison Radio, HMP Brixton, London, SW2 5XF.
Yes, and don't forget to check out our other podcast, This Sit Down. We have spoke to some incredible people. I have cried, and we've got some incredible people lined up. So don't forget to check that out. A massive thank you for listening. A massive thank you to Dwayne for sending in his voice clip, and to Emma for joining us today. So thank you so much, Emma.
It's been a pleasure.
Emma.
Thank you for having me.
And don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. It really helps other people find the podcast, and we want to reach as many people as possible.
Yeah, we do. And we hope you enjoyed the episode, and we'll see you next time.